Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna. On behalf of Evolve Pune team, I, Dipasha, would like to welcome all of you to the 15th session of our Gita Essence series. In the 15th session, we are going to discuss chapter 15, Purushottam Yoga. And in this particular chapter, that's a part of Dhyana Yoga. So Prabhuji will take us through the journey of Purushottam Yoga, chapter 15, which is considered to be very auspicious
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Over to you, Prabhuji.
Yes, Anush Pranam. So we welcome you all for today evening session. We'll be starting from the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So before we start, I'll offer prayers and then we'll welcome you all and we'll start with the program. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatai Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Everyone together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we welcome you all for today evening discussion, Wednesday evening, and we'll be starting our discussion on chapter 15 today. Chapter 15, the title is The Yoga of the Supreme Person, or else it is also known as Purushottam Yoga. So yesterday we discussed chapter 14, title as Modes of Material Nature. And in that chapter we saw that how Lord Shri Krishna tells Arjuna or talks to Arjuna about the concept of modes of material nature. The chapter begins with the discussion of how Lord Shri Krishna says, Aham bija prataha pitaha. I impregnate the Prakriti with the Jivas. And Prakriti is like a mother who provides bodies to the living entities, not one but 8.4 million species. And from there, Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak about how a living entity gets entangled with this material energy or the material world. I hope and believe you all would have seen a cobweb. You know, the spider from its own tongue or from his own body creates a cobweb. And if you've ever seen any insect being trapped into a cobweb, you'll see the more the insect tries to move around, the more it gets entangled into the web. Similarly, Krishna explains that how all of us, all the living entities born in this world, through our fruitive actions, gets more and more entangled or trapped into the web or into the trap of Prakriti or Maya or the material nature. So much so, our liking, disliking, everything is governed or influenced by Prakriti. Prakriti has three gunas or three qualities, Sattva gun, Rajagun and Tamagun. So yesterday we saw through the example of a monkey cell, the cap seller. We talked about three brothers who go to another town to sell caps. We saw how the people in different gunas, Sattva, Raja, Tamagun, being influenced by different modes, react differently to the similar situation. So we don't have control on the situations, but we do have some amount of control on our response. Right now, our responses are governed by the influence of a particular mode. Sattva, Raja, Tamagun, they're always in conflict with each other to take a predominance on a living entity. And they become predominant. How they become predominant determines or depends on what actions, what decisions we make in life. So there are foods classified under the modes, there are music classified. Everything in this world that we see is classified according to the modes, can be classified according to the modes. And the more we associate with the items or the things of mode of passion and ignorance, that mode becomes more strengthened or nourished, and that becomes a predominant mode. So yesterday we kind of understood that for us to have a happy living, progressive living, we need to cultivate Sattva Guna. So more or less this was the discussion yesterday. We also spoke about how a leader reacts, leader in goodness, passion, ignorance, how do they respond and all that. So we had I would say a very wonderful and fantastic discussion where hopefully all of you got to know why you behave, why you act, what is the cause for it. And now you know you have the freedom to change how you respond. And that freedom is, as Krishna says, we have to first of all exercise our free will to do the following that Krishna says in 14th chapter verse number 26. Mamachayo vicharena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samatiyetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Mamachayo vicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Arjuna, if you want to gain freedom from the influence of these modes, then engage in my devotional service, because I am the master of these three gunas and the Prakriti. I can direct Prakriti not to trouble you. So like this, Lord Shri Krishna explains this in the chapter 14. And now we're going to discuss about the Purushottam Yoga, or the yoga of the Supreme Person. In other words, Lord Shri Krishna says, by taking to the practice of devotional life, bhakti yoga, one not only reawakens one's lost relationship with the Lord, but also becomes free from the influences of the modes, and that, in true sense, paves the way of our independence, our independent living, being freed from all kind of clutches and limitation. But before we can gain that independence, being freed from the influences of any kind, where we live a life as we want to live a life, we need to understand one thing. We need to make a choice. We cannot have Krishna and Maya both together. We cannot live a life in a way where we may try to serve the Lord and gratify our senses. So therefore, Lord Shri Krishna in this chapter 15 makes it very clear. Arjuna, or Lord Shri Krishna, explains in details about the material nature as well as the spiritual world, and tells Arjuna, for you to become steadfast, for you to become determined on this path, to gain freedom, to gain true independence, you need to detach yourself from your material aspirations. You may have your material aspirations, but at least detach yourself from the results, so that you remain focused on the ultimate goal of life. In this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna also revises our lakshya, or our goal. What should be the goal of our life? So Lord Shri Krishna is going to establish also. So this chapter begins with where Lord Shri Krishna talks about the requirement or the need of cultivating detachment from the material world, wherein Lord Shri Krishna compares this material world with an upside down banyan tree. Text number 1, chapter 15. Let's start our discussion from this chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhvam Moolam Madha Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedavit. Krishna says, O Arjuna, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is a knower of the Vedas. So Lord Shri Krishna is comparing this material world to a banyan tree which has its roots upwards and the branches down. And Lord Shri Krishna says that this is an imperishable banyan tree. In other words, this world, Krishna says, is eternal. Just like the rise of the sun and the setting of the sun is an everyday affair, everyday sunrise and sunsets. It doesn't mean when the sun sets, the sun is not there. Only for the time being, the sun have disappeared from our vision. Similarly, the creation, maintenance, and destruction is just a temporary phase, but material world always exists. So, have you ever seen a tree that has its roots upward and the branches downwards? What is Krishna trying to indicate? What is Krishna trying to talk about here when he says a banyan tree? There is a banyan tree which has its root upwards and the branches downwards. And Lord Shri Krishna explains ahead. But we all have seen such a scene in the reflection, yes or no? When you look at the reflection of a tree in a river, then you see the roots upwards and the leaves or the branches downwards. And that's the point here. So this banyan tree that Krishna is speaking about is nothing but is speaking about the material world, which is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. A spiritual world, a place of eternal happiness called as Vaikuntha, where Krishna calls this material world to be Dukhalayam. Material world is entirely opposite of the spiritual world. In material world, we have dualities of Sukha, Dukha, Labha, Nuksana, gain or loss, victory or defeat, fame, infame or disfame. However, in spiritual world, everything is absolute. there is no sukha dukkha, there is only sukha. In spiritual world, there is no janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. In material world, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. So Krishna, through this example of a banyan tree, is describing the perverted nature of the material world, and through this Krishna will introduce the subject matter of spiritual world. The real world or our home is spiritual world. Real happiness lies there, but out of ignorance we are searching for the happiness in the reflection. In essence, all our attempts in this world are futile, because once a person dies, he never takes anything along with him. And let's take a look at what a death can teach us. Death, which is only a feature of the material world, doesn't exist in the spiritual world. I would like to briefly give you a story of a king who went on to win most of the world, but at a very young age, he succumbed to a disease and finally died. Just few days before his death, he had certain life-transforming reflections, and he wanted to share those reflections and lessons with everyone else. So he called for the minister and he said, I am about to die. Therefore, I have 3 final wishes that I want you to fulfill before I die. The minister, with all submissiveness, said, yes, my dear king, whatever you say shall prevail. We shall definitely do that. And the king made a very strange request, or made 3 strange wishes. The very first wish the king made, that I want my dead body to be carried by my physicians and the doctors only. The minister said, all right. He didn't understand, but he agreed. Second wish, I want the pathway that you're going to take me to the cremation ground or the funeral site. I want that whole pathway to be littered with all the golds, all the jewelries, all the diamonds and the pearls and the wealth that we accumulated all this while. Minister said, all right, sir, whatever you say. Sounds bizarre, but what can I do? I have to follow, otherwise you will take me along with you to cremation ground and get me buried next to you. You are the king, ultimately I have to follow you. And then he made the third wish. And he said, make sure my hands are lying outside of the coffin. Don't put my hands inside the coffin. I want everyone to see my hands lying outside of the coffin. Minister was perturbed, have never heard such a strange wish. He agreed, and then he requested, my dear king, what's the idea behind this all 3 wishes? Do you have any lesson to teach? What do you want to accomplish? And then the king said, yes, I want the world to learn 3 very important lessons that I just realized at the brink of my death. I don't want people to make a mistake that I made a mistake. And the very first lesson it was is, people can think that they can live for long. When they get diseased, they think that my physicians, my doctors would save me. But the fact is, nobody can save you when the death arrives. Everyone, your friends, your family members, your relatives, the doctors, even the best of the doctor cannot save a person when death arrives. Do not waste this human form of life. Do not depend on temporary support system. Do not take your life for granted. Then the second, litter the way with all the wealth that I have acquired. He said, I want people to know, people to realize, like I, the great king, spent all my life earning wealth, accumulating wealth. However, at the time of death, I cannot take anything along with me. I have to leave everything behind. Do not waste the human form of life in acquiring those that you cannot take along with you to the next life. Third, have my hands out, or keep my hands out of the coffin. He said, I want people to understand, even the great king like I was born empty-handed and have died empty-handed. No one comes along with anything to this world, and no one leaves this world along with anything. So I want people to learn not to waste the human form of life in acquiring some temporary gifts. In other words, trying to make a permanent settlement in a temporary place is nothing but foolishness. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna compares this material world with a banyan tree, explaining the need of becoming detached from this world for our own good. Otherwise, generally we all waste our life trying to make a permanent settlement in this world. Imagine a person, he sees the reflection of a mango tree into the river, and he sees big huge mango fruits, and he jumps into the river to pluck the mango and eat the mango. Would he be ever happy? Would he be ever satisfied? Because he will never ever find the real mango, because he is chasing after the reflection. That's the point. And this becomes the main subject matter of this 15th chapter. To begin with, let's define an acronym for this chapter, which is HOME. HOME, where H stands for home or hotel. What is this world? Is this material world our real home, or is it like a rented apartment or a room in a hotel? Imagine you go to a hotel, you check in, and as soon as you enter the room, you change the whole interior layout of the room. You take off the walls, you repaint the wall, you change all the furnitures and everything, and suddenly the owner comes and tells you, get lost. This is not your place, this is my place. Something like this is what unfortunately everyone tries to do, being in this world, trying to live this life as if he or she is going to live forever in this temporary place. Therefore, just like this person trying to take off everything in the rented room of a hotel sounds ludicrous. Similarly, those who are in knowledge, when they see people out of ignorance working so hard to acquire more money, more possessions, and not giving any attention to who they really are, what is their real need, they also find such people to be foolish and ludicrous. So the gist of this discussion is, the Lord Shri Krishna brings here, that the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Just as a banyan tree has a reflection in water, similarly the spiritual world also has its reflection, which is the material world. Here every individual is frantically searching for happiness in their life, but the substance which gives happiness cannot be found in the material world. And I'll give you an example, or Krishna himself is going to speak on this principle in a short while. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna, in the first 5 verses, by introducing this material world to an upside banyan tree, urges Arjuna to cut down this banyan tree. What does it cut down to banyan tree means? Where Krishna is saying, Arjuna, become detached from the material life. How do we become detached from the material life? Krishna explains, first, you have to find a person in knowledge, accept his guidance. The person should be tattva darshinaha, one who has himself freed from the modes of material nature and who has seen the truth. And that person will teach you how to surrender to the Lord. Thus, one who does like this will definitely gain freedom from the clutches or the cobweb or the trap of the material energy, Prakriti, and attain to the kingdom of Godhead. So Arjuna said, my dear Lord, but how do I develop the detachment? Krishna says, by surrendering to a bona fide guru. And Arjuna wondered, but my dear Lord, how do I surrender? What do I surrender? What is the meaning of word surrender? Have you ever wondered? Surrender means what? Surrender what? What do I have to surrender? And Krishna explains what to surrender. What are we supposed to surrender? 15th chapter, verse number 5. Krishna says, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyātma-nityā vinivytta-kāmāḥ dvande vimukta sukadokasmagne gacchantya-mūಢā padamavayam tat. So what do I need to surrender? Our pride, our illusion, and give up the bad association. Krishna says those who are free from the false prestige, illusion, false association, who understand the eternal, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, sukha and dukkha, and who unbewildered, dvandve vimukte, know how to surrender to the Supreme Person, finally attain to that eternal kingdom. So what do we need to surrender? is our false prestige. So taking shelter of a guru, submissing oneself is like giving up our false ego. We cannot have a false ego and then take shelter. What is a symptom of a person with a false ego? He would never listen to any good advice. He would never listen to his seniors because he thinks he knows the best. Any classic example from the scriptures who never ever took an advice of the seniors? Is one of the main character of what we are reading, about what we are reading. Yes, Duryodhan. When Duryodhan was about to be killed, when Duryodhan, Lord Shri Krishna told Bhima to break his thighs, and then Duryodhan was about to die, and then he was blaming Krishna because of you cheated us, and he was blaming all that. So all our kids know the answer because they heard the whole Mahabharata during the summer break. So there Krishna tells Duryodhan, you deserved it. And Lord Krishna gives various reasons. One of the foremost reasons Krishna says, Arjuna, your biggest flaw was you never heard or took advice or heard to the good advice of your seniors. You always thought you knew the best. That is the meaning of false prestige, where a person would never accept the good advice. He thinks or she thinks, I know the best. Why do I need to hear? And that's the reason people don't take the message of Bhagavad Gita seriously. They even have an ego issue with the Supreme Lord, thinking that why do I need to believe in God? I am the God, I am the creator, I write up code. Only God knows who uses the code, but I'm a developer. Everyone has some kind of an ahankar like that. So that's the point Lord Shri Krishna makes here. So freedom from illusion. What is the greatest illusion that binds us? I am the controller. I am the proprietor. I am the enjoyer. Freedom from illusion and the false association means the bad association. And when one is able to give up these three things, attains to spiritual world is what Krishna mentions. Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, what if one doesn't attain to the spiritual world? In other words, can't I be happy in this material world? I love my brothers, I love my wife, I love my kids, I love my palace. I worked so hard to acquire the skill of being the best archer. We worked so hard to build Indraprasth. Why can't I be happy in this world? Why there has to be so much calamity? Can't I be happy in this material world? I don't want to go to spiritual world. Krishna says, wait a second. What are you talking, Arjuna? You're talking about that as if the material world is a real place of your happiness. You don't know what spiritual world is all about. So here Lord Shri Krishna begins to talk to Arjuna and offers a glimpses about what spiritual world is. Here Krishna gives a glimpse of the spiritual world, showing how its nature is perfect, complete, and fully satisfying to all. Once one goes to spiritual world, never falls down. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease. Whereas in the material realm, an individual is compared to a monkey. Just like a monkey keeps hopping from one branch of the tree to another branch of the tree, similarly, the living entity keeps hopping from one body to another body through reincarnation. If a person fails to return, then he has to reincarnate, and then he is awarded with a tailor-made body to fulfill his desires. Thus, different life situations that are being given to us in this material world are meant to teach us a very important lesson. I believe yesterday Mother Anushri had asked a question about some difficulty and challenges in the office life. So if she is there, this is for you. The different situations are put forward to us to teach a very important lesson. And the lesson is, we all are looking for happiness, which is the right thing, but we are looking at the wrong place, which is the material world. As long as we are looking for happiness in this world, we will never be happy. So Lord Shri Krishna here talks about the subject matter of the spiritual world. And Krishna says in verse number 6, Na tad bhasayate süryo na shashanka na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. The spiritual world is the real tree. That supreme abode of mind, Krishna speaks, is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never ever return to this world. Arjuna, I am your greatest well-wisher. In fact, I am your supreme father. Krishna have already established this principle a point before few times. Aham bija pradhapitaha. 14th chapter we just read yesterday. Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father. And once again Krishna explains to Arjuna, Arjuna, every living entity in this world is my amsha, is my child. Verse number 7. Very interesting verse. Mama evamsa jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Every living entity is my amsha. But due to their forgetfulness, they're trying to enjoy in this place of suffering, and they've forgotten their real home, which is the spiritual world. We are like the lost son of our father, and for all of us, our father is the richest person in this whole world and the creation, and we are like a lost son who we lost our father in the Kumbh Mela. You remember 1970s movies? Every child would be lost in Kumbh Mela only. I don't know what was a passion or what was the attraction of all the film directors of Kumbh Mela. So only time while growing up, I got to know what Kumbh Mela was, the place where kids get lost or kidnapped. That was my understanding of Kumbh Mela. Yes or no? Do you remember some instances like this? Every brother or sister would be lost in Kumbh Mela. Anyway, so we are like that lost son or the daughter of the Lord in the Kumbh Mela, which means the material world, who not knowing who our father is trying to find happiness. But what Krishna says? Manashashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Shashta refers to 6. Mana plus indriyani, there are 6 senses. Prakriti sthani karshati. Karshan. Karshan means friction, which means struggle. Arjuna, every living entity in this world, is struggling very hard, but yet they're not able to find happiness. So in other words, Krishna is telling Arjuna, why are you struggling so hard for your sustenance and maintenance? And Arjuna said, who told you, my dear Lord? I am not. I am enjoying my life. But Krishna says, no, you are. The very time you say you're enjoying your life proves it you are a fool number 1. I'm not saying, this is Krishna's word, okay? Don't get angry at me. Now, what is the evidence that whoever says that they're happy, you look at the Facebook photos and the WhatsApp photos that people publish as if everyone is making a Titanic pose. You know the famous Titanic pose long time ago? Everyone is blissful in ecstasy. But Krishna says those who think they're in ecstasy, they don't understand they're actually suffering the most. And I'll give you a very interesting definition or understanding of what happiness in this world. Tell me yes or no if you agree with this or not. Imagine at this point of time, I get a 1 liter water bottle for you to drink water. Now, maybe some of you may drink it, take it a sip or two, maybe because I asked you. Maybe drink half a liter. But drink a 1 liter water, maybe too much for some of you or most of you. Yes or no? You may not relish it. But imagine if I offer this 1 liter water bottle to a person walking in a desert on a hot sunny day who is thirsty. If I give him this water bottle, he'll say, only 1 liter? I want 1 more liter. Isn't it? He would relish every single sip of the water. Whereas for you, you will not find any happiness in the sip of the water right now. Water is same. Why one person is able to relish, not the other person is able to relish? What's the reason? So the beauty or the irony, not the beauty, but the irony of our happiness in this world is, the greater the suffering, the greater is the experience of happiness. Now you might find this to be a little surprising. What do you mean by this? To give you an example, if you're really hungry, and then you get to eat food, how many of you say that you relish it more? Yes or no? Yes or no? That's a question to all of you. If you're really hungry and then you're given a food, how many of you say, Prabhu, I would relish it, I would love it, I would be so grateful for every single bite? Imagine if there is no hunger. Hunger is a suffering. If there is no hunger, then you're given a food, even the best of the food, the most delicious food, you will not relish it. Yes or no? You will not relish it. So your relish in this world, your happiness in this world only arises from the experience of suffering. Is that making sense? That is the reason Krishna is saying, Arjun, what are you doing? You're my Amsha. Why are you struggling in this world? What you call as a happiness is not a happiness, is a foolish proposition, is a misguided understanding of the real happiness. Your suffering is what you call as happiness. But still there are people who would say, oh, I am enjoying my life. Soon everything will be okay. Anyways, who has seen what will happen after death, my dear Lord? Life means to enjoy to the fullest. Why to care for anyone and anything? So these are the people who think life is means this is the only life. There was no past life, there will be no future life. And this Hare Krishna Takla people keep talking too many things about post life, previous life, what not. Reincarnation, this and that. They keep destroying our any hope to live in this world also. Anyways, in COVID times, life is miserable outside. And whatever little hopes of enjoyment we have, they keep coming and destroying. Baba, I am not destroying. I am repeating what Krishna is saying. You have any problem? Write a letter to Krishna. Don't complain to me. We are reading verse by verse what Krishna is saying here. Krishna says, Arjuna, you're a fool. You don't understand. You're misguided. You don't know after death there is another life. Text number 8, 15th chapter. Shariram yad avapnoti yachapi utkramatishwaraha grahitvaitani samyati vayugandhani vashayat. Mother Dipasha, can you read the translation, please?
The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another.
Yeah, the process of transmigration is what Krishna is speaking, Arjuna. You're totally misguided. Not Arjuna is misguided. Arjuna is acting as a common man. Through Arjuna, Krishna is trying to teach us those who think there is no life after death. You're misguided. In other words, human life is very, very sacred. Human life is like a train junction. What is a junction? Junction is a place where you can make a choice. Human life is a life of choices. And with choice comes responsibility. Imagine you go to a zoo and you will see a zookeeper going around in the different cages and feeding the animals. When he goes to the cow, he doesn't ask ghas ya mas. He gives her the ghas. When he goes to the lion, he doesn't ask, my dear lion, what will you take for lunch today? Ghas ya mas? Gives the mas, yes or no? But when the same zookeeper goes to the restaurant, the waiter comes and asks, my dear sir, what do you want today? Ghas ya mas? And the server say, today I feel like having mas. Yesterday I had ghas. Hayana. As a human being, we have an ability to make a choice, not animals. A cow would never eat a flesh and a lion would never eat a grass, but animal, no, not the animal, but the humans can eat everything. Flying in the sky, crawling on the ground, swimming in the ocean, wherever they are, they have the ability to make any and every choice. The point is what choices make determines what reactions we get. We cannot claim innocence if we don't know the rules of the land. We have already discussed this point. So Arjuna wondered, my dear Lord, what happens after death? Okay, you say there is a life after death, then what happened? Krishna says, Arjuna, you acquire a new set of instruments. This is text number 10. Excuse me, I just lost my page. Yes, text number 10. No, not external. So text number 9, sorry. Text number 9, Krishna says, Shrotram chakshu sparshnam cha rasanam grahnam eva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. Please read.
The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects.
In other words, Lord Shri Krishna says, when you quit a body, there is another set of body waiting for you with another set of instruments. Depending on how you have lived your life, the choices that you have made, you are given a new body, either in the human species or the animal species or the plant species or the species of the trees and whatnot. And like this, in this material world, although the nature of the soul to be Sat Chit Ananda, Sat means to be eternal, nobody wants to die, but we are forced to die. We are forced to quit our temporary residence. Everyone is looking for knowledge, everyone is curious, and that's the reason the Facebook and the WhatsApp and all the news industry is making money, because we all have the nature to know more. Ananda is bliss, is what everyone hankers for, and that's the whole, you have a recreation industry centered about. Why every living entity is searching for these three things? Because that's the nature and the need of the soul. And Krishna through this chapter makes this point very emphatically, very strongly. You're looking for it at the wrong place. You're looking for the right thing, but at the wrong place. Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, if soul exists, then why can't we see the soul? Krishna said, what can you see, by the way? A foolish person cannot see the truth. For example, if I ask you, how many living entities are there in your room right now? Who is there can tell me what's the number of living entities? When we cannot see what we have in our room itself, what we can see. So Krishna says, foolish cannot see the truth. This is text number 10. Utkramantam sitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananupashyanti pashyanti gnana chakshusha. Please read.
The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this.
Krishna says foolish. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity quit his body. So Krishna says foolish and leaves it. But I'll take a step forward and give you a definition of who foolish is. What foolish means actually. Imagine all of you. Just imagine, okay? Don't get too serious about the example. Because there's going to be a little horror, thrill, adventure, and crisis in this example, okay? Stay tuned. Only an example and hypothesis. So imagine you're taking a flight, because I'm right now in Pune, so let's take it for granted. You are also in Pune, for to imagine. Imagine you take a flight from Pune to Delhi. Peaceful flight, no crisis, nothing. Everything is smooth. The pilot announces in 15 minutes, we're going to land, so kindly prepare for the landing. However, just 2 minutes after that announcement, there's a huge uproar in the whole flight. People are screaming, "Bachao, bachao, help, help, save, save." And you're worried, what's going on, what's going on? And among this crisis, you see there are two people who have stood on the aisle, wearing a black coat, black pajama, have a big beard, and bald-headed. You can imagine who I'm talking about. And they have a gun in their hand, and they say, "We are terrorists, and we have hijacked your plane. Nobody is going to get down at Delhi." One of the terrorists goes inside the cockpit, instructs the pilot, and he comes out and says, "Now, we are making an announcement. So the plane is not going to go to Delhi. Our plane is rerouted to Lucknow. We are all going to go and land in Lucknow." Everyone is frightened. "Bachao, save me, terrorists." Even you are scared, wouldn't it be? Terrorists. So risky. However, you turn to your neighbor. Your neighbor has a big smile ear to ear. He's in full ecstasy. And you're completely perplexed. Why this fool is smiling? What's wrong with this fool? We have been kidnapped and this fool is smiling. He looks at you, you look at him, and he says, "De tali," which means congratulate. And you say, "For what?" "Arey, I purchased a ticket for Delhi and I'm getting a free trip for Lucknow. You should be happy also." So he's a fool or not? He's not understanding he's got kidnapped and he's thinking he's getting a free ride for Lucknow. You feel like probably bashing him, but right now you have a bigger problem than to bash him, so you keep quiet, no problem. The flight reaches the Lucknow airspace, and then again the terrorist goes in the cockpit, comes back out again, and announces, We have changed our plan. The plane is rerouted to Calcutta. Now we are going to Calcutta. And everyone is screaming, Bachao, Bachao, save, save. And you're also terrified. And again you look at your neighbor. He is beaming ear to ear, full smile. He looks at you, you look at him, and he again says, De tali. And now you're wondering for what? And he again tells you, I purchased one-way ticket to Delhi. I am getting a round trip of India in one ticket. What a wonderful offer. You'll feel like smashing him. What a fool, isn't it? You agree, he's a fool, isn't it? He's a fool. And then your plane enters Calcutta airspace, and suddenly, again, the terrorists make an announce. We have changed our plans. We are rerouting our flight, and now we are going to Dubai. All of you, no, out of India. There's no hope for our survival. Save, save. People are screaming, and this person is clapping and laughing. You look at him, and now this time he looks at you and he says, De do tali, double congratulations. And you're totally bewildered. What happened now? What? And he says, Na visa, na passport, free ka international travel. So this is the definition of a fool that Krishna explains. Similarly, the foolish person does not see how he is migrating from one body to another body. He thinks to be a glorious. He doesn't see how he is suffering in this world, and he calls his suffering to be happiness. So who is this who has hijacked us? Hijacked is, this is in another case, is an analogy, but real life case, we all are hijacked. But hijacked by what? What has hijacked us that is taking us from one body to another body and taking us to the path of destruction? Krishna says, what has hijacked us? Chapter 3, verse number 37. Arjuna, Kama Esha, Krodesha, Rajaguna, Samadva. It is the lust that has hijacked every living entity, who is an eternal enemy and forces one to the path of destruction, which a person out of ignorance does not understand. Therefore, a person perpetually suffers at the hands of lust unless we realize we have been hijacked by it. Therefore, Krishna says again and again, take a shelter of bona fide Guru to awaken spiritual knowledge and to cultivate detachment from the material world. Arjuna was shocked. Arjuna did not experience such a ghastly example. Thank God Krishna did not give this example. I just created it, by the way, all right? So Arjuna was not so worried. So I hope you are back from this hijacking episode. Let's go ahead. And Arjuna began to ponder. My dear Lord, problem is, people are still so much attracted to sense gratification. How can they get attracted to you is very difficult for me to understand. Krishna says, no worries. And this brings us to the third section, where HOM, M refers to maintainer. Krishna tells that one can develop his Krishna consciousness once one get to know how I am the maintainer of all living entities. It is I who maintains every living entity. When one knows who is his true maintainer, but naturally will develop a sense of gratitude and appreciation. Yes or no? Just like every child is grateful to his parents, her parents, for raising them and taking care. Yes. Similarly, Krishna says, once everyone understands that I am actually their maintainer, I am the maintainer of their maintainers, and also their direct maintainer, but naturally will develop gratitude and affection for the Supreme God. So, let's take a look, begin with the three fundamental questions. This is a section which we have discussed in our Gita Wisdom series. I'm not going to go into the details, but raise some fundamental questions here. Very first, who created the universe? Fundamental questions. Who created all the living beings? And who created life? These are the fundamental questions of life, and science gives a very bizarre answer for it. Who created the universe? They say bomb blast. At one point of time, under infinite temperature, infinite pressure, infinite density, in a space, there was an explosion. And for those who consider the beautiful creation and their own beautiful self were created as a result of an explosion, we have some questions for them. Where did this point came from? Why did it explode? And who created the Big Bang? Even for an explosion, somebody is required to explode. And finally, if it exploded in an empty space, from where did that space came from? No one has an answer for this. However, Krishna says, Pitaham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha Vedyam pavitram omkara riksama yajurevacha. I am the father of this universe. I am the mother, the support, and the grandsire. 9th chapter, verse number 17. I leave on to you to decide who you want to believe. The Big Bang, the explosive theory, or the facts, or the words of Lord Shri Krishna given in Bhagavad Gita. Next, who created all living beings? Which means the different species, 8.4 million species. And further, we have a great personality by the name of Darwin, who strongly believed his ancestors were monkeys. I hope you don't believe in it. Even if you believe, don't go and tell your grandfather. We are taught in school that you are monkeys, or our ancestors were monkeys, okay? Probably you might get a nice beating from your grandparents. So this Darwin theory is a joke in itself. He wrote it as an hypothesis in his own paper. We discussed the details in the previous session when we talked about this whole thing. So our question to those who believe in Darwin's theory are as follows, which is up on the screen. How does one species transform into another? It just offers a fairy tale story to give reasons, but have no factual evidence to prove it. In fact, the scientists don't believe in it, but still we are taught. That itself is an irony. Stephen Stanley explains, fossil records show that all species of life, simple or complex, have always existed together. Because if one species must have evolved from another species, then not all the species cannot be found at all the times. But the fossil record shows that all the species have always existed. And second, there is no link ever found between one species to another species. All species are unique. But Darwin's theory says so. There is a connection. What does Krishna says? Who created all living beings? Sarvayonishu Kaunteya, 14th chapter, verse number 4. Murtaya sambhavantiya tasam brahma hadayonir aham bija pradhapitaha. Please read the translation.
It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father.
Yeah, Krishna says, I created all the living entities. That is what Krishna says. Again, I leave it on to you to make your decision. And then who created life? We have another great scientist by the name of Richard Dawkins, who said chance theory. If he believed everything came by chance, then why he gives the credit to himself for this theory? His theory must have come by chance, yes or no? This is a common sense point. So he thinks all the single cell, multi-cell, complex cells all existed by chance. They formed, and that's what created life. But anyways, when he wrote his paper Selfish Gene, 1976, he himself said, please read it as a science fiction, what is taught to us as a scientific fact today. But what Krishna says, who created life? 15th chapter, verse number 7. Mama evamsa jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashashtani indriyani prakritisthani kashyati. Translation, please.
The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
So it's reasonable to accept an intelligent creator than to consider that some random events are the cause of this whole material creation. Therefore, Krishna in verse number 12 to 15 says the follows. Krishna says, I am the maintainer of all. I maintain the gross body or the subtle body and also the spiritual body. In text number 12 and 14, Krishna says, I read out the translation as it is from Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, verse number 12. Krishna says, the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me. Imagine if there is no splendor of the sun, there is no life possible. If there is no moonshine, then there is no taste. It is a moonshine that gives taste to the fruits and the vegetables. And the fire, there is no digestion without fire. So everything depends. So Krishna is the maintainer. Next verse, Krishna says, number 13, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit, and I become the moon, thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. These orbits, these planets rotating in its orbit, who is maintaining that? Krishna says, I. गाम अविश्य च भूतानि धारयामि अहम ओजसा. Dharami means dhar karke, dharan karke. I am restricting them in their position through my ojasa, through my shakti. So Krishna maintains our body by arranging fundamental resources that provide the energy of life. But Krishna also says, I also protect or provide or maintain your spiritual or the subtle body for that reason. Not or and the subtle body. Krishna says, very famous verse, 15th verse, Sarvasya chaham hidi sannivishto matha smrita jnanam apohanam cha. So with the first two lines, Krishna says, I am the maintainer of your subtle body. And the last two lines, he is the maintainer of the spiritual body. So how? Krishna says, as Paramatma, I supply the knowledge, remembrance and forgetfulness. And not only this, Krishna is also the maintainer of our spiritual body. 15th verse, last two lines. Vedecha sarve rahameva vedyo Vedanta krit veda vedeva chaham. Arjuna says, Krishna, I am the source of Vedic knowledge. And the purpose of Vedic knowledge is to know me. And Vedic scriptures are given by Krishna to us that nourishes our spiritual body, that helps us understand what should be the goal of life. And that is what Lord Shri Krishna says. So, one who knows that I am the maintainer, who would not but naturally feel grateful for the Lord and have appreciation for the Lord. And those who fail to do it, there is no hope for them in this life or the next. That's the essence of it. Finally, we come to the last section of the acronym HOME, E for essence. The verse number 16, 17, 18 are said to be three shloki Gita, where the essence of Vedic scriptures is being given. So when Krishna says, I am the source, I am the compiler of the Vedas, and he establishes a supreme position. So most confidential knowledge or understanding of the Veda that Lord Krishna is the supreme being is being established by the Lord in the following verses. Here in this following verses, Krishna establishes that the personal form of the Lord is the highest and defeats the Mayavad concept of Nirankar. The Lord does not have a form, he is formless. So verse number 16, Krishna says there are two kinds of living entities. Please read.
There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Shara, fallible, Akshara, infallible.
Fallible means who are prone to fall down. Or in other words, all of us in the material world are said to be Shara. Infallible, who never ever come down to the material world, can never be. Then Lord Shri Krishna says, please read.
Krishna is the super soul. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the supreme soul, the imperishable Lord himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person.
So Krishna says, I have entered into the three worlds and I am maintaining them. And I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and infallible, and I am being celebrated both in the world and the Vedas as the supreme personality of Godhead. So Brahman is not the greatest, Krishna says. Supreme personality of Godhead, the personal form, is the highest. So those who say or claim by performing some yoga exercise we can become God, no, not possible, because God is already there. You cannot replace him. He is irreplaceable. So this is a very important verses, but we are doing the overview, so I'm just giving you a summary of it. So summary of Vedanta Sutra has been provided by Lord Shri Krishna in these three verses. For those of you who don't know what is Vedanta Sutra is the gist or the essence of all the Vedic scriptures like Upanishads written by Vyasadeva in the form of sutras or the prose. And these three are the prominent subject matter which are discussed in Vedanta Sutra, where Lord Shri Krishna in this section of Bhagavad Gita has offered us the essence or the conclusion of Vedanta Sutra. In essence, coming to the conclusion, Arjuna pondered, my dear Lord, What are the activities of one who has understood the conclusion of Vedanta, who have understood Vedanta Sutras, who has assimilated the knowledge of these three previous verses? Krishna says, such a person engages in devotional service. One who knows who I am and who is he and our relationship. Text number 19. This is the second last verse for today. Krishna says, Yo evam sammudho janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharataha. Please read the translation.
Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Partha.
And finally, that's the gist of it. One who knows this truth engages in devotional service, which Krishna already said. One who understands that I am the maintainer but naturally would become grateful and develop attachment to me. And finally, Lord Shri Krishna concludes the 15th chapter titled as Purushottam Yoga, the science of the Supreme Lord, where Krishna says very interesting statements. Very first line. Iti guhyatamam shastram. Iti means thus. Guhyatamam, the most confidential knowledge. Shastra means of the Shastra. Idam uktam maya nagaha. Idam uktam, by me, maya nagaha, has been disclosed to you. Arjuna, I have just disclosed to you the supreme confidential knowledge. Etat bhutva buddhiman syat. Buddha, the one who is intelligent. Buddhiman is intelligent. Buddha means understanding. One who understands this knowledge. How does he live? Krityascha bharata. All his endeavors would become or would know perfection. So Krishna says, I have given you the knowledge which is the most confidential. What is the knowledge that Krishna spoke about? Krishna spoke about 4 key things in this chapter. One, what we call as our home is not a home but a rented room. Our real home is in the spiritual world. And then Krishna described about the spiritual world, Natad bhasayate süryo na shashanka na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramamama. Then Krishna explains the nature of the spiritual world. And Krishna says, one who, however, does not develop attachment or attraction for going back to his real home has to undergo transmigration. And then Krishna speaks, Mame vamsa jiva loke, every living entity is my part and parcel, but forgetfulness of their identity and their relationship with me, they're struggling with 6 senses. And as a result, they have to take birth again in this material world. But one who knows, I am the true maintainer, I am the maintainer of his gross bodies, the subtle body, and the spiritual body. The gross body by providing the things for the sustenance of the gross body, like the food, the water, the air. For the subtle body, acts as a source of remembrance, forgetfulness, ignorance. And for spiritual body, because Krishna says, I am the compiler of Vedas. One who knows this would naturally develop attachment to me. And finally, the essence. The essence is the Supreme Lord, the personality of God. It is the highest form, is even the form of a Brahman, or what the Mayavad conception of life is. And Krishna says, one who knows this reality or truth about me, such a person engages in devotional service. And with that, Lord Shri Krishna concludes that Arjuna, I have given you the highest knowledge now, knowing which no one would return back to this world. And the most importantly, this is a knowledge once one cultivate would naturally become detached from the material aspirations, would not take his material life so seriously, which otherwise everyone in their ignorance take it to be the final and the last life. And they try to gratify or deal with all the problems of life as if they're going to solve everything within this lifetime. And they forget about taking advantage of the human form of life, which is to inquire about the Lord, which is to inquire about who am I, what are the cause of my suffering and happiness, and how can I find access to eternal life. Just like the questions that Buddha or Gautam Siddharth had asked, which led him to his journey of self-realization. With this, we come to the conclusion of one of the very important chapters of Bhagavad Gita, and also one of the shortest chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 20 verses. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for enlightening us on this chapter 15, being it's a Purushottam Yoga chapter, although it's the shortest but not so easy to understand. Prabhuji, there are few questions. So, first question is by Tanmay.
Yes, please.
Tanmay, you may unmute yourself. You should be able to. Try it now.
Hare
Yes.
Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful session. Prabhuji, I have a question related to the session only.
What right?
So, Prabhuji, I wanted
Yes.
to ask that another day we were discussing about this Nishkam Karma Yoga.
Uh-huh.
So, how as a student can I cultivate this Nishkam Karma Yoga?
Oh, wonderful question. Just give me a quick second. Let me just fix my system here. Let me become free or liberated from material attachments. Right now in front of me, my computer. So let me have a full focus and attention. A very wonderful question. How can I practice Nishkam Karma Yoga as a student? The very first thing you have to understand as a student, you have a great opportunity to glorify the Lord by studying sincerely and scoring great marks and recognizing it as to be a blessing of the Lord. Right or no? When people understand that you are a devotee of the Lord Shri Krishna and you have scored great marks, but naturally they will understand your connection and they will glorify the Lord. So by that you glorify the Lord by doing well, by excelling in your education. If that's possible. For some reason, if that's not possible, uh, as a living entity, we all have to perform our duties. Perform our duties as sincerely to the best of our capacity. Stop wasting our time in things which do not uplift our consciousness. For the kids, for the young students, the greatest distractions are social media, the video games, and the movies, things like that. So these are the things that as a student we can try to avoid. Like yourself, you're attending such kind of spiritual discourses. Something like this, if people do, the young kids do, they will stay focused, and through the process of chanting of holy names of the Lord and by recitation of the Bhagavad Gita verses or Sanskrit verses, it refines and tunes up our memory. It increases our ability to focus. So when we learn to chant attentively, but naturally we become more attentive in our all other activities. The reason for distraction is tamoguna or rajoguna. So when we take to the process of chanting and the lifestyle accordingly, like sleeping early, waking up early, we cultivate goodness. When we cultivate goodness, our attention span increases. And when attention span increases, you would naturally perform very nice in your academic, performance. You'll do great in your academics. That's the whole point. Okay.
I have one more question. Can I ask it?
Mm-hmm.
Prabhuji, that Lord says in Bhagavad Gita that this world is dukhalem ashashvatam. But in ISKCON, we say that we should chant Hare Krishna and we will be happy. So if the Lord is saying that you cannot be happy in this world, so how can we perceive this thing?
Because the devotee is not living in the material world. When you associate with the Lord, you are in the spiritual world.
Meaning in this material world, we are in the spiritual world as well.
Huh?
Living in this material world, we are also connected with the Lord that you mean to
Yes.
say?
Srila Prabhupada said when he gave the definition of this Hare Krishna Mahamantra in his very famous tape of 1966, Prabhupada said, this transcendental sound vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, immediately connects one with the spiritual reality and frees one from the material realm, wherein one can immediately experience the rise in spiritual ecstasy and freedom from all material distress and anxiety. And then Srila Prabhupada continues to give the whole purport to it, an explanation that very beautiful. I guess we should share with all of our participants. Can we both of you make a note? Either remind me if you don't have it, I'll share, or else you both share the very famous recording of Prabhupada defining what Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So,
Ji Prabhuji.
jaisa sang vaisa rang. We connect with the Lord, but naturally we develop the qualities of the Lord, and we become detached or become free from the influences of the modes of material nature. So, what is binding you and I in this world, or what makes this world to be material world, is the influence of the modes of material nature. And when one takes shelter of the Lord, when one is becoming free from the influences of the modes of material nature, but naturally he is becoming connected with the Vaikuntha. So Vaikuntha is a physical realm. Vaikuntha is also a consciousness of serving. What is a material world consciousness? The consciousness of taking service. What is the consciousness of Vaikuntha? Giving service. So in the material world, everyone asks, what's in for me? What's in for me? What can you do for me? But the moment you ask them to do something for you, immediately they run away. Yes or no? So in material world, everyone is selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed, therefore always troublesome, always frustrated. In spiritual world, nobody is self-absorbed. Everyone is Krishna absorbed. Krishna is the father and mother of all. When you become absorbed in Krishna, which means you're absorbed about thinking on well-being and service to all living entities. Therefore, a devotee of the Lord, as much as he loves Krishna, similarly loves every living entity in this world, either with the plant, the animals, the birds and beasts, and he cannot see any exploitation, any harm being done to any living entity. So Vaikuntha is also a consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Swati Mataji is having one question, that these 8.4 million species, do they exist in spiritual world also, or they are only in the material world?
Hare Krishna. All right. So, according to this chapter, material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Reflection cannot exist without the real object. So there are 8.4 million species here. So the true form of there should be there in the spiritual world through the means of inferential logic, hence proved. I am proving you through the inferential logic, okay? Through that way. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Akriti has a question. Akriti, you may unmute yourself.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Actually, I had two questions. The first one was that so we're still committing sins, and we already have our own quota of sins that we've committed till date. So when with God's grace we do get to go back to Godhead, do we have to make like a detour to hellish planets to first pay up for our sins and then go ahead, or?
So Krishna says one who takes to the process of bhakti, he is freed from all his past sinful activities.
And Prabhuji, in case of devtas, do the devtas also get to go back to Godhead, and also the people who only pray to devtas and get to go to heavenly planets, is that like their permanent abode, or do they come back to earth, like to the material world again?
Just like the Infosys IT company sends some people to America for deputation, and when the visa is expired, where do they come back? To their local town, Habibpur, Gajipur, Champipur. Similarly, when your good pious credit is expired, you come back to different puras. Okay? All right. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I am not able to see any question yet.
Wonderful. Hare Krishna. So I'll ask a question to all of you.
Ji, Prabhuji.
So how are you all? Happy, blissful? Now how do you answer? You have to switch on your camera and smile to give a confirmation. Okay, great. I'm not asking happy, blissful because because the sessions are good or something. In general, I'm asking, are you enjoying your stay in the material world or not? That was my question precisely. How are you liking your hotel accommodation? I hope the room and all that is okay. And hopefully you're not taking your accommodation, temporary accommodation, too seriously, okay? Don't get attached to your next door hotel roommate. As much as you are temporary, so does your next door hotel room partner is also temporary. And the beautiful part of this world is when you go to check in your hotel room, you get to choose with whom you stay. But in this world, when you are checked in, you don't know with whom you're going to stay. It's all a random allocation, not random, of course, based on a karmic account. The point is, there's no point in getting too attached with the things of the world. And that was the whole subject matter of today's discussion, being detached, becoming detached, knowing the truth of life. All right, so great. 2 days from today is Gita Jayanti. So on this day of Gita Jayanti at Kurukshetra, a very fortunate event happened. And the most fortunate event was Arjuna developed a desire to ask Arjuna to drive his chariot in the middle of the army. If he would not have developed that desire, you and I would not be sitting and discussing Bhagavad Gita today. So that fortunate event happened 2 days from today, which means day after tomorrow. Not the Christmas, of course, that's a pious day on its own, but we are celebrating Gita Jayanti. So Lord Shri Krishna spoke all 700 verses. So here I'm just throwing some ideas up on the air. You can say yes or no, what would you think about it? So how many of you think we should come together and recite all the 700 shlokas on this day of Gita Jayanti? Some of you look so worried. प्रभु जी एक चैप्टर में 1 घंटा, 18 चैप्टर में 18 दिन, क्या 18 घंटे चलने वाला है वो? नहीं. I believe should be 2 hours and 2.5 hours maximum. I'll make you run like anything. Don't worry about it. Because I have a lot of engagements also. I have to fix in my schedule to accommodate that time. So we'll do that. So how many of you are? And the schedule I'm thinking for it is 8 o'clock in the morning.
Prabhuji, I'm having exam on the next day.
Yeah. So you should study. Great. No problem. So what about others? Give me a thumbs up for 8 o'clock in the morning. Maybe 8 to 10 probably, or maybe 8 to 10:30. We will try to do it. Okay. So online? No, I'm coming to your house, Adi Lakshman in Kerala. What do you mean by online? Of course, online. All right. So of course, online. I hope the host is making note of it. We can send an invite message tomorrow.
Prabhuji, how many hours? Like that means I can.
Who is saying what? It looks like a radio.
Duration.
Memory point of view.
Duration. Yeah, that will be a discovery on day after tomorrow. All right. What will be the duration? Okay. Fine. Okay, great. So 8 o'clock we set a target because of course you all want to have a breakfast also. That's not a day of fasting. Oh, by the way, that's Ekadashi. Anyways, it's fasting only.
Yes, Prabhu.
So good. I'm free now. Oh, I will be skipping my chanting then. Okay, I have to see. I have a lot of engagement. I forgot it's Ekadashi. But yeah, we'll be targeting something for 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll see how it goes about. We'll confirm you the timings tomorrow evening. Probably when we meet again, we'll confirm your timing by then. Those of you who are able to join, please join in. Great. Thank you all. All right.
We have got a concluding question from Srinath ji. So can we take
Yes.
it tomorrow?
Srinath ji and Nataraj ji, please go ahead. Boliye.
Actually, I just want to know, Prabhuji, normally what happens with this corona, what is everything happening in our lives, we have started becoming too much judgmental. We judge people and we don't know we are right or wrong. Sometimes, we are judging them right or wrong. This Kali Yuga.
So that's a great realization that you got, that you're becoming judgmental. According to Bhagavad Gita, we're already judgmental. So that's a good epiphany, as they say, or revelation. So what was your question precisely? I missed out. So we're becoming judgmental about what?
In this COVID time, what's going on? We are working from home, everything. First of all, when COVID started, we are scared to meet each other because we thought he would be carrying the virus or she would be carrying the virus. Now,
I'll tell you the fact.
yes,
All of us have already gone through the stage of virus. Now stop worrying about it. All right. If you're still smiling and happy just because you already got it, you recovered it. Otherwise, it's for so long with the kind of the population and the kind of things we have to consider we haven't got it even once. That will be too surprising. In the last 9 months, I'm not going to ask, I'm not saying you have to say, but haven't you fallen sick? Haven't you got cold and all that? If yes, probably your younger brother or sister of COVID probably got onto you or something. So I'm not saying become rash, still follow whatever the government says. But fine, when you could be hale and healthy for 9 months, even though you are not much aware of it, how you're hale and healthy, don't worry about the future. If that is what it to be, it would happen.
Okay. And second thing was, how can we be less judgmental?
It's a very good question, very brilliant question. How to be less judgmental? Think about it. If Krishna has to ever become judgmental about us, now what it means to be judgmental? Judgmental is judging others for their actions and behaviors, isn't it?
Yes.
Making a conclusion about their behaviors being good or bad. Now, if Krishna would have to ever become judgmental about Srinath, think about what Krishna would be thinking about Srinathji now.
Correct. Many things.
See, in all these lifetimes, we have betrayed Supreme Lord, life after life, isn't it?
Right.
Just because Krishna is not judgmental, therefore he's still with us, hoping that let me give him a benefit of doubt.
Correct.
If you're ever serious in your life to have any relationship, please remember this sutra. Always learn to give benefit of doubt, which is opposite of judgmental behavior. In judgmental behavior, we make a decision, we make a conclusion. And the opposite of that is benefit of doubt. Lord Shri Krishna, life after life, keep giving us a benefit of doubt. One more try, one more try. Let's not give us a hope. Let's not give us a hope. One more try, one more try. If Lord can do with us for so many unlimited times, when we are understanding the greatness of the Lord, understanding the message of Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, shouldn't we cultivate this quality of benefit of doubt and stop being judgmental? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say a very profound statement. When the faults in others haunt you, look within yourself, discover the faults that you have, and work on it.
Correct.
When we see the faults in others, it is nothing but the reflection of those same faults within us, because of which we are able to see the faults.
Right.
It's a profound statement. Think about it. If you don't know what a white color looks like, how would you say this is white?
Correct.
Yes or no? Simple.
You had no-
So the moment you say that person is at fault, that exists within I, that's the reason I'm able to see it.
Correct.
So to put it in the context, if you are a father, if you are a teacher, then it is your responsibility to correct and see a fault for the good of the dependent.
Correct.
Apart from it, we have no right, we're wasting our time and energy in being judgmental or seeing faults in others.
Okay.
We are just destroying our well-being of life. That's the whole point.
Okay.
So the subject matter of today's chapter 15 is very important. Cultivate detachment. So a little bit cultivate detachment from correcting others, being judgmental to others and whatnot. Learn to give a benefit of doubt. That is on a very, very external level I'm talking about. Finding a happiness and peace in one's life. I have not anything touched upon the spiritual principles here as such, but I did talk about how Krishna is willing to give us benefit of doubt life after life. Can't I give? Of course, this again has a context. I shared general principle. Of course, you have to understand if you have a clear evidence of somebody doing some misdeed, some misbehavior, then there is no question of benefit or doubt. Okay? This was in context of judgmental behavior. But when somebody have done wrong, there is no judgmental behavior. There is a judgment. There's a difference. So I hope you understand the whole context. That's the point. Okay?
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much. So with this, we conclude our chapter 15 discussion. And we look forward to all of you to be with us tomorrow for chapter 16, which is going to be divine and demonic nature, which is also going to be very interesting. Hare Krishna.
There's one last thing. What is the Sugriv have written?
So Prabhuji, Sugriv ji is not able to attend regular classes because he has to go for book distribution. So he is
Oh,
apologetic.
okay, okay. Okay, great. No problem. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hari Hari.
Say Hare Krishna. It was really so. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Cici.